How's it going? I'm working on this most recent page of the Hyperspace Pocket strip game. Most of the way there. I was working on it yesterday and was a little bit frustrated that I didn't quite finish it, but I'm pretty happy with the look of everything. So I got to this point and I thought, well, maybe I'll make a video, and partly for my benefit, partly for yours. I've never really documented how I work these days, and I thought maybe it was time, because it's been a long time since I've made a new video, especially one of me drawing. So one of the first things I want to point out, and the keen-eyed folks amongst yourselves probably already noticed this, is that I don't pencil and ink as two separate steps. I basically I do what I call layouts and breakdowns, or breakdowns and layouts, I guess. So basically I rough out everything in sort of like you might in a thumbnail, but I do it right here on the board, and then I go through, and as more or less one whole step, I pencil and then ink. So I do layouts of in the pencil, and then ink all the finished work. One of the big keys to that particular transition was being willing to do things with whiteout. I used to not like using whiteout. I didn't like how it looked on the board, and I mean, let's be honest, you can see through here especially, it's kind of muddy and gray in here, and I realized that doesn't really matter, because I edit all that out in Photoshop anyways, and the reader will never see it, so I may as well use all the tools at my disposal and be okay with fixing things after the fact in a way that I didn't really let myself do before. And along that way, I discovered a much more open way of drawing, a much more comfortable way of making sure that everything was exactly how it should be for the story, and not just focusing on the look of the artwork itself. Also, my cat might jump up on the table. She likes to do that a lot. So, all right, let me think about this a bit. I'm going to try and keep it in camera, but I don't make any guarantees here, especially when I flip it like this. If you're curious of what white pen or whatnot I'm using here, this is actually an FW refillable pen. It comes empty, and then I put Holbein opaque white in it, which is a very nice white ink. I've probably tried about every type of white ink on the planet at this point. And I use Posca. Where'd it go? Oh, it's in my hand. These for a long time, but at this size with the fine tip. And I like those, but they do often raise this. I'm using Speedball Super Black. So the Poscas can be a little bit contrary to the Speedball, so I have to watch. I found that if I have them, the Posca's primed a little better, and kind of the same thing with the Holbein. if I have them primed a little better so there's more ink in the nib, it doesn't do it quite so much. But if I have just a little bit of ink in the nib and then it starts scraping up the black ink, it'll really reactivate it. And then I get this ugly muddy gray very quickly, and it's like, again, it's something I can Photoshop out, but it's not pretty, you know. Even though I do want my artwork to be functional and not focus so much on the, you know, aesthetics of the artwork itself, I do want it to not look like complete crap. Let's see. Alright, I think that's more or less what I want to do with this. I was debating on how to deal with Gynax's hip here. This panel got rushed. My son was coming home off the bus, and I tried to get as much done before I have to go get him off the bus. And I ended up kind of slamming through this panel. And, you know, sometimes that can be good, especially on an energetic panel like this where there's a lot of kinetic energy going on in it. Oops. I missed that mark. All right, let that dry. Let's see. I think my white wasn't quite dry underneath. So now I got to think about what I want to do with Clint here in the background. I know I want him on his phone. This page, I'm handling these pages quite a bit different than I would normally. Normally I have a complete script and I have everything fairly well laid out, and panel by panel. I'm okay with changing that as I go. I don't like to be super rigid in those things. If I have a better idea that comes along in the process, I'll let myself use it. With this strip game, it was very different though, because it was a challenge to interact with my readers, and B, to sort of fight a deadline a little more than I have in a long time. Actually, a lot more than I have in a long time, because I'm doing basically a page a week, and each page is in response to what the readers either comment in terms of the rules of the game, or that either Idris or Clint will be taking off a piece of clothing depending on the numbers left in my readers' comments. And if it is a grand total of an even number, it'll be Clint taking off a piece of clothing, which he's already lost his pants thanks to Gynax. Or in this particular instance, Idris was the one that lost, and, you know, thus the spoiler protection. So if you want to check that out and participate, anybody's open to participate in it, you can go to my comic at hyperspacepockets.thecomicseries.com. I'll put the link in the description. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And you can comment a number, and then I'll total it up each Monday at 8 a.m. my time. And then we will have a new winner for each round. So I was thinking about doing Clinton a basic silhouette here, because I've kind of run myself out of space to have too many balloons here. I was supposed to have a balloon here and ended up moving her head over a little bit, and I reconfigured it over here. So I'm trying to be a little economical with the space in this panel right now. So, you know, that happens. One way to do that is to do basic silhouettes. Phone. Let's a little bit more. One of the reasons I like, oh, there's my cat. One of the reasons I like to work pencil and ink at the same time is that I can have the inks and not worry about having to redraw something that I need to erase over top or underneath them. Like I can just draw right through this figure of Gynax and get Clint to the position he needs to be clear and tell my story the way I want. But I don't have to worry about, preserving pencil lines here. All right. Clint's already in his boxers, so I don't know. I'm still considering. As I've gotten older, one of the bigger struggles that I have is that my eyes are more, I have more of an astigmatism in both my eyes. And so I have to watch where I'm sitting relative to the page a lot. Because when I rotate it like this, all of a sudden things start shifting in my vision. And what was in perspective or was looking in correct proportions suddenly becomes horribly skewed. I've also started using this light box and flipping the whole board over to see the image from the reverse to help compensate for that. And that's helped a lot to really improve my pencils, just to keep things in actual perspective relative to or in proportion relative to what I'm thinking that they are, even though it looks good until I move it. Smaller figures like this aren't so much of a problem. It's the big figures. This one in particular, I had a lot of trouble getting her into perspective right. I made a sketch in my sketchbook of the basic outlines of these, the basic positions and whatnot. And I really liked what was going on in that sketch, and I tried to get that translated, and it fought me. I had to make a little bit of a compromise, but the end result was pretty good. But taking something and going from here and then making it bigger, sometimes things just don't work quite the same. Especially since I don't do it in a mechanical way, like I'm, printing it out or something. I typically just eyeball it because I've pretty much adhered to the old school way of drawing a page. I never really done a whole lot of digital work in the drawing part. I've gotten to do a lot of colors, but it's just, for me, it's a comfort thing. It's not even a convenience thing. I'm not very comfortable doing that type of work in the computer. Sorry. Need to wipe my nose. All right. Check my notes here. This is what I was talking about for the basic, very rough sketches. I had some ideas, in terms of what I wanted to achieve on the page. Since it's one page and each page is sort of a block and then a response to the comments online, as well as sort of setting up for new things down the line. It's a very different procedure from my typical sketching or scripting and writing process. So it's been fun. I like the interaction I'm getting. Let's see. Okay. I guess I really haven't nailed down that line too well, but it's great. Okay. All right. With this particular set of pages, sometimes it's a matter of just letting things happen and, being open to the response and enjoying that new type of process. It's very different. And that's, this whole thing's been an experiment. This whole thing's been seeing what I can do in a certain time frame, seeing what I can do with a certain amount of input from the reader, and how I can respond and how I can push myself. It's been a lot of fun. I haven't used this pen yet today, so I'm kind of getting it primed up and ready. All my pens have Speedball ink in them. I think I mentioned already, but with the brush, it can be a little filmy on the bristles before I start, so I gotta take some time to make sure it's functioning as I want it to. With 2 layers of black like I'm doing here, and I've got her forearm, and then I've got Clinton in the second panel behind her. There's a couple of different ways that I could address that to separate the forms. One is to leave a little white gap between the outline of her forearm and him. In this case, I'm just running them right up against each other, which, because I don't have any like massive blacks in that forearm, I can do that without too much issue. They tend to separate each other visually, basically because of the scale difference. If they, like I'm going to do here on the arm, on Clint's arm relative to the rest of his silhouette, I'm going to leave a little gap, basically an outline of white on the form of his forearm, and that'll create its own separation. And if it doesn't look right, if it doesn't quite achieve the definition that I want, I'll go back in with some white out and just adjust. I gotta watch so I don't get my finger back. And usually the pen or the brush dries pretty quickly, but sometimes it'll leave a little pool somewhere, and I'll stick my hand in it. It's just part of the process. I usually end up with black and white all over my fingers, and this ink in particular washes off pretty easily, so it's not a huge deal. Some of the other inks that I've used over the years, like the Doc Martens Bombay in particular, that will adhere for quite a while, usually through the end of the day. I personally don't mind that either. Part of being an artist. Definitely going to have to fix up that hair. That's fine. The way his hand is positioned outside of the rest of his silhouette, I did that on purpose so that I can, if I need to, I can just go ahead and black all that in. Once I erase here, I can see how it looks, and if I need to tidy things up a little bit, looks like it's all dry. Like, I already know that I'm going to have to fix this bit of hair here, and I'm not really liking the shape of the back of his head. So I'm going to have to fine tune that. This particular pen's a little tricky. It does wobble in there, so it can be a little difficult to be overly precise with it when I need to. I try not to let it affect me too much. Going with the flow with an ink is quite a literal experience sometimes. Let's see. I don't like the shape of his mouth. think I'm going to go ahead and bring these in a little bit more. Maybe just eliminate this one entirely. There. I think that works. I have some very small pigment pens that I usually use for this type of thing, with the little tweaks, little adjustments here and there. I've been trying to not use them lately and just sort of minimize the tools that I use down to about 4, but I might go dig it back out. Because it's one of those things that sometimes having a lot of tools to do a lot of different tasks is important, and sometimes it gets in the way because you're too busy picking out what tool you want to use instead of what line you want to make. So let's see. Yeah, I think I'm going to just move this entirely. That's better. I need to be a little more patient. Sometimes it's just a process of back and forth till you get it right. All right, that's not bad. Put a little more white back into these locks, so there's a little bit more separation there. And I think I want to move this. Tweak that finally. All right, we're at a half an hour. I'm going to call that good for the day. On the video, that is. I still got more to do. But I hope you enjoyed what I demonstrated here. You know, I think it's time to add a little more library to the file in terms of my techniques and whatnot. And, you know, it's just fun to demonstrate. I don't talk about it a lot, so it's fun to put it out there. All right. Thanks a lot.